Now I know this is going to thicken up some more as it cools, so I'm going to shut my stove off. You notice all the rice grains in there, the bhagi in there. And as we did with the bhagi rice or spinach rice, we need dasheen bush or taro leaves. The dasheen bush is pretty much the leaf of the dasheen plant or the taro plant, and this is what we have here. It isn't the greatest quality because, as I mentioned in that video and in all my videos, I am based in Canada. This is imported, so I'm very grateful for being able to source it, first of all. And second of all, we're trying to use what we can. Now, if you don't have access to taro leaves, you can use your favorite greens, whether it's collard greens or spinach or any of those things will work. This is what the actual leaf looks like, nice and big. And I remember as a kid, when I was growing up, I'll quickly show you something. The water just beads off it. And I remember my brother and I, when we were small and after the morning dew, we would try to go and see who would catch the most dew caught in the leaves. But anyhow, it isn't the greatest, but all we do is we'll peel back on here, pull this back. Any sort of imperfections, you'll want to cut it out. Like, see this sort of rust spot here, you can, into the rubbish kind of thing. Give it a good wash and we'll get to chopping up. This time, unlike the last recipe, when we did the rice, we're going to use the stems, and I'm old school. You can certainly chop this up as it is. Give it a good rinse down and chop it up. But I like, you know, my mom showed me how to do it this way. You would pinch and pull back, pinch and pull back, just like so. And what that does, it takes the sort of tough outer skin that's going to the rubbish, and this here now will just snap like so. But you can chop it up into small pieces, and it makes it a lot more tender, easier to cook. What I forgot to mention, two things. One, you may want to coat your hands with some vegetable oil or wear gloves when doing this. If this was freshly harvested, it could do two things. Cause, you know, that's the little imperfection there. It would cause your hands to get stained, and a sort of a sappy residue would remain on there. It would discolor it. Ladies, we're not trying to F up that manicure. No, we're not trying to mash up. No, we want to keep that nice. The other thing is, it may itch your hands. So, yeah, chopping time. So after it's all been prepped, washed, and everything else, what we're going to do is put the stems aside. We're going to gather all of the leaves together with this sort of stem where we ripped it off there at the very top, like so. Just making a sort of a roll or a bundle. The other thing I must mention is I mentioned staining your hands. Don't let it get into contact with your clothing either. It will stain that. We're going to chop that off, boom, into the rubbish. We ain't trying to use that. And then all you would do, as we did in the last video, thin ribbons or shards, like so. I'll set that aside. And then with the stems, you can just line them up like so, and hit that. Just a rough little chop. Like so, boom, that goes on there. And you all know I am a huge fan of prepping, so it makes everything easier to go. So there's that bhagi with the stems, the taro leaves with the stems. We've got some thyme, some turmeric, half of a habanero pepper, about 5 or 6 cloves of garlic, onion, carrots, pumpkin, okra, and here I have some brown and wild rice combination. That's going to go in there. So let's get cooking now. Got my soup pot on a medium flame, 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. And since I know it's already warm, in goes that sliced onion, along with the garlic and half of that habanero pepper. The other half will make its way into another recipe. As that comes up there, boom bam, we're going in with some fresh ground black pepper. And give that a quick stir just to move it around. I'm going to turn my heat down to low because I'm not trying to burn anything. I just want to pull out all those lovely flavors. About 3 minutes later, I'm going to go in with some tomato paste. That's not tomato ketchup, but actually tomato paste. That's going to bring the acidity to the game. It's going to bring a nice sweetness to the game once it heats up here. And I also want to put a bit of turmeric, what we call saffron. And that's going to bring, I mean to say, antioxidants as well as the color. And both the tomato paste and the turmeric, or saffron as we call it, will help develop that lovely color. The kitchen is already smelling lovely. Now here's an ingredient you won't find in any traditional dish in the Caribbean because we never really cooked with it before, but I like to deglaze. And that is about 1/4 cup of white wine. I'm going to turn my heat, bring that up to a boil, and just cook off the sort of alcohol from it. As that wine sort of cooks off, I'm going to go in with a teaspoon of Caribbean green seasoning, and that's my Caribbean green seasoning there. It's always in the fridge. And if you're new to Caribbean cuisine, green seasoning is just a combination of herbs along with garlic and seasoning peppers and all that. We make a puree, and my base is olive oil. We put it in the food processor, we break that down, and you know, we keep it in the fridge. Just about every dish we make, that is going to be part of it. And here's where I add the Bhagi, which is the taro leaves. If you're using, as I said, any sort of greens, you can add it at this point here. You want to give that a good stir. It may look like a lot, but that will cook down. And I'm going to put the lid on here for a few minutes just to have this thing get going. It's been about 2.5 minutes. You can see it's starting to well down already. Just going to move that around. And I'm going to hit it with a tiny bit of sea salt, nothing too heavy, because I'll be using vegetable stock in here, and I know that's the store-bought vegetable stock, which tends to have quite a bit of sodium in there. I'm only playing with that salting. No, that thing is too risky, boy. All kind of high blood pressure and all kind of thing. No, not able. Now here's one thing, ladies and gentlemen. Uncle Chris is very rare. I'll tell you, don't wash the rice. That wild rice with brown rice, I didn't wash it. Boom, straight in there. The reason being, the reason why I didn't wash it is because I want the starch from that to help give the soup some body. So that is, and I also want the rice to get coated with all the flavors that we have on the bottom of the pot here. So once things start sucking in all them juices and all that, hey, it's pure niceness all the way around in this soup. Now you'll notice, unlike the Bhagi rice that we did, this is the follow-up recipe. As I said, I was going to follow up with this recipe, a soup version of that recipe. Unlike that recipe, it's not so much about the rice, it's not so much about anything else, but it's a combination of everything with the broth and everything else. So don't go too heavy with the rice. The amount of rice you see down in the description there, the amount you saw me add there, will be enough, granted. If you wanted to add more rice, that is totally up to you. Move that around one more time. It's been about 2.5 or 3 minutes since we added the rice in there. At this point, we're going to add the vegetable stock, and I'm going to go in with a total of 8 cups of that vegetable stock. And I also have a small carrot that I just chopped up into wheels. I'm going to add it at this point here. Move that around like so. Just look at that niceness happening in the pot. And you notice the color we got. Now, there's going to be some trippity come and say, well, Chris, where's the dumplings and things like that? No, there is no dumpling in this soup. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bhagi rice soup. Dumpling not making an appearance. We're not hurting any wheat whatsoever. No. Some fresh thyme. And I like tying it with a little bit of kitchen string Boom, that's going to go in there. And the reason why I like doing that, because this is a soup. It'll be hard to identify those thick stems later on, and I'm not trying to choke. I'm not trying to choke my family or anybody else. I will add a further 4 cups of water in here. So 8 cups of stock, 4 cups of water, and if you wanted to use chicken stock, beef stock, whatever stock you like using, by all means, rock it. So we're doing this vegan, we're doing this vegetarian. Without the salt, you can do it ital as well too, but for now, we're trying to bring that up to a boil. I got to add the water. I brought it up to a boil, and I've had it on this rolling boil for 12 minutes now. Here is where we're going to go in with our pumpkin and our okra. Oh, some of them trying to not be included. No, we're inclusive. Everybody getting a little bite. Gonna hit that a little stir and let that continue cooking until that pumpkin gets nice and tender. The okra starts breaking down, and it's just niceness happening there. It's bubbling away now for about 35 minutes in total. Here's where we will personalize things. If you want, notice the pumpkin, it still has a bit of texture to it. It still has its shape. If you wanted to boil it down a bit more and crush it, that is totally up to you. Here is where we're gonna fish out the thyme. The thyme has done its time. It's done its thing. Anyhow, that is why we tied it up in a bundle there. The other sort of personalization is how thick you want it. If you want to cook it down some more to get it more thick, you can certainly do that. The final personalization you will want to do is to taste it for salt and adjust it accordingly. Sup, soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me. Email address down here. I'm really trying to tell people the email address. Them butts will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pod. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irene. Now I know this is going to thicken up some more as it cools, so I'm going to shut my stove off. You notice all the rice grains in there, the bhagi in there. So Chris here, CaribbeanPod.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Bhagi rice soup. We did the bhagi rice or the spinach rice a couple weeks ago, so I just thought I'd drop this one on you guys as I promised. Do give it a try, man. And you notice the broth, eh? You notice that broth there too. Tuck in, Uncle Chris. Just tuck in there.